Good afternoon and good morning, everyone. Welcome to today's Exploring by the Seat of Your Pants Hangout. My name is Joe Grabowski, and I will be your host for today. You might notice I have a little bit of company today. This is George Kourounis. George is a Canadian explorer and adventurer. And George, I mean, we could go on and on, probably all day, of some of the amazing things you've done before, but hit us with three highlights, three things.
I explore extreme places around the world. So I chase tornadoes. I go inside hurricanes and volcanoes. And today we're 2 kilometers underground.
That's right. Pretty exciting today. A little Exploring by Seat of Your Pants in the field. We are in Sudbury, Ontario. We are 2 kilometers underground in the SNOLAB. Pretty amazing to be able to, well, first of all, reach all these classrooms from deep underground. It's pretty awesome. And we're not alone. We are also joined today, and let me make sure I've got our microphone ready, by Dr. Erica Creighton. Erica, how are you doing today?
I am good. I'm excited to have you guys here, and I'm excited to talk about SNOLAB.
All right, very cool. Well, George and I are hanging out in a lab down here, but Erica's in one of the control rooms. So we're going to jump back to Erica in just a second. But we thought what we do to get things started today, we've got classrooms joining us from Canada, classrooms in the US. We thought we'd talk a little bit about the process of getting down here. It was an adventure just to get down here into the lab and then start exploring. In fact, we got down here probably sometime around 9 o'clock by the time we were actually down here and settled in. And we've been exploring down here ever since. This place is huge.
It just goes on and on and on. But to get down here, there's some tremendous procedures that you have to go through because, well, you have to travel through an active mine to get down here to the lab, which is a very clean area. So you have to go through the dirty area to get to the clean area.
We're in the deepest underground clean facility on the planet. So that's pretty amazing.
Really amazing. And so you get in this elevator and you get safety briefings. You go down. It's about 1.2 miles, and this elevator drops almost like a free fall. Once you get down there, you strip off your dirty clothes, strip down completely naked, take a shower. They give you some fresh, clean clothes, and then some safety equipment, eye protection, helmet, the whole works, and then you can visit the facility.
Amazing. The only part you left out is the really sweet fluorescent suits you got to put on first. You could see us from probably 2 kilometers away in those suits. It was pretty special, but we got down here, like you said, we made friends quick. We had to strip down and got all scrubbed up. And one of the first things we saw, and I think this is probably going to blow some of the classroom's minds, there's the deepest flushing toilets on the planet here. So we got to check those out, which is pretty darn cool.
They work well.
Yeah. So then we've been exploring all the different experiments so far at the SNOLAB. So when Erica takes over, she's going to share a little bit more detail with you. But we got to visit pretty cool areas in the lab. We got to see where some of the experiments where they're studying the neutrinos. We got to see exactly
matter down here, and there's reasons why this lab is so deep underground. But I believe Erica's going to talk about.
Yeah, we'll let Erica share her expertise there. So in fact, let's do that. Let me jump over to Erica, who's been waiting patiently in the control room. Okay, you there? All right, cool. All right, Erica, how's it going?
I'm good. How are you doing?
So Erica, we were pretty excited about the trip down into the mine today because it was our first time, but you probably made that trip at least 100 times or more.
Probably getting close to 1,000 times at this point, but it never gets old. Seeing the rocks, seeing the mining equipment, the whole group of people making this happen every day.
Oh, so Erica, George is making his way down to you, and I just had an idea. I saw the air shower in behind. I think we should make him take an air shower before he's allowed to join you.
It's a little loud, but sure.
Yeah, I think we should. Just make sure George is really clean because we are in a really clean facility.
Yes, we are.
All right, very cool. Well, Erica, I'm going to let you take over for a little bit. You've got some cool slides to share a little bit of the science at SNOLAB, and then we will let our classrooms loose with some questions.
Fantastic. All right, I am going to screen share then the entire window. And now, so can everyone see these lovely self-serving pictures of me?
You are full screen, good to go.
So, hi, I am a research scientist here at SNOLAB, and I had no idea what a research scientist did until I started in this job, and it turns out there's not much that I don't get to do while working here at SNOLAB. So this is a picture just from the other day. Winter lasts a long time here in Northern Ontario. So the Snow Lab is a surface building, but we're also a deep underground facility, and you can kind of see where we are in the purple pin in the map. We are in an active mine in what's called Creighton Mine in Lively, a town in the greater Sudbury, Ontario. So the red line, the red that you see in this map is the ore body. So we're a nickel, it's a nickel mine, nickel and copper and some other heavy metals. But a meteorite hit 2 billion years ago and brought up, let some of the nickel kind of fuse up and come farther up to the surface. So if you have a stainless steel sink in your kitchen at home or in your classroom, it is very likely that some of the nickel in your sink came from Sudbury. So SNOLAB is the inset, and the little red glowing red dot is at the 6,800 foot level, or just over 2 kilometers underground. We go down the elevator shaft, like Joe said, straight down, and then we have to walk another 1.5 kilometers. And the mine goes even deeper. They keep mining down more to get more nickel ore for all of the things that we need, that we use nickel for. A lot of it is stainless steel. So we are, like I said, 2 kilometers underground. That's 3.5 times taller than the tallest structure in the Western Hemisphere, which is the CN Tower. And George has just joined me here for when we go back to the camera. Here is a map of the lab. So like Joe said, it is massive. He was in the, I am in the room that is on the lower left-hand side of the map. Joe is in the kind of middle right side where the 2 red doors are. This is SNOLAB. We are home to a number of science experiments, neutrinos, dark matter, and some other biology experiments. The lab is 5,000 square meters, or 54,000 square feet in area. It is ginormous, and it's just tunnels and caverns and little pockets of science hidden everywhere. What we study at SNOLAB primarily are neutrinos and dark matter. And they don't actually look like these plushies, but I think they're really fun to show instead. Neutrinos and dark matter are part of what make up the field of particle astrophysics, which is a bit of a mouthful, but kind of covers a lot of topics, and there's a lot of open questions left in this field. So it's a great thing to study, and it will be for much time to come if any of you decide to study particle astrophysics. So we use neutrinos that have come from many different sources, primarily the sun, but also nuclear reactors, and they can come from the Earth around us. Neutrinos form in particle decays called beta decay, and we can use neutrinos to study the Earth, to figure out why the Earth is so warm from the rock decaying inside. We can study the sun and understand why the sun is burning. What is the fusion process that gives us our light and our heat? And we can study how stars explode. What is the mechanism that lets that happen, and how are they so pretty? Neutrinos can tell us a lot about the world around us. So this is a picture of the experiment that I work on called SNO+. This was during its original construction in the early 1990s, a lifetime ago. So this is a 18-meter diameter sphere that is holding a bunch of light sensors. These are very delicate light detectors, and there are over 9,000 of them mounted in this sphere. So it's a huge ball, 18 meters across in diameter, and the cavern that you can kind of see around it is flooded with water now. That is 21 meters wide and 30 meters tall. This is a really big cavern. And this is what the detector looks like right now. It is filled with water, so we can see how water is blue. Each of the inside dots is, again, one of those light sensors. There are ropes that hold the detector up and ropes that will hold the detector down when it's filled with a different liquid that is lighter than water. So we use this to detect neutrinos and antineutrinos, which are my 2 little fluffy buddies that I've got on the picture here. through a number of different reactions, but we're looking for more of the properties of these neutrinos. And this is a really great experiment that can try to understand different properties of neutrinos in different ways. At SNOLAB, we also studied dark matter, which is one of the substances that holds the universe together, holds galaxies together, and stops stars from flying off the edges of them. It compromises about a quarter of the mass of the universe, a quarter of the weight of the universe, but we don't know what it is yet. So there are a bunch of different experiments here at the lab that are looking for different ways that dark matter could interact in their detector. It can make a sound, it can make a tiny flash of light, and it's one of the big questions in physics, in particle astrophysics, is what is dark matter? So there are lots of more questions in physics, and we need lots of people to help answer them. So I am back here.
All right, hit that green button for us, Erica.
There we go.
All right, here. Oh, and that guy's back too. Hey, George. All right, well, I didn't want to be alone here, so I've got Chelsea joining me. Chelsea is a science communication intern at the lab, and this is her first trip down to the lab too. So a lot of people getting their first trip down to the lab today, which is really cool. So Erica, one of the first things that kind of struck me coming down to the lab is not only the size, but there's a lot of people who work here, and it's a very diverse group of people, a lot of different jobs.
Yes, so we need more than just scientists to get good science done. We have engineers who are some of the group who are sitting behind me. We have some science students over here too. And we have to build the experiments. We have millwrights, and we have electricians, and we have machinists, and we have engineers to run all of our process plants to make sure the materials that we make our detector are purified. We have an IT crew to make sure that our computers work. And we have cleaners. So Joe talked about how we had to shower to get in the lab. All of the material has to shower. It all has to be washed and cleaned and scrubbed before it can even come into the lab, and then we make our detectors out of it. There are about 120 people that work at the lab, and probably about half of that, 60, are underground every day, in addition to the scientists that come from different universities to work on these experiments. It is, and like Joe said, it takes all types. Every different people have different perspectives on what is the best way to get stuff done, and we need everyone's different opinions and experiences to make the experiments the best they can be.
Very cool. Well, you bring up the cleanliness, and I know how important that is. And I just don't know if George is as clean as he could be. I wonder if we can send him into that air shower behind you and just make sure that George is really clean and ready to be in the lab. I'm just not 100% sure about if he's ready.
George in the air shower. Yep, in the air shower.
Let's send George to the air shower.
So it's a little bit loud. So the air shower helps make sure that any dust that has settled on you from the air, or any crumbs left over from lunch, you know how George eats, that they're all washed off before you can go into the ultra clean areas. So I don't know if you can hear that hum behind me. Those are some high-powered fans.
I can see his lab coat rising, so he's definitely getting all that dirt blasted off. So that's really good.
Yes.
All right. Well, we'll let George finish that up. And just before we meet the classrooms, I thought it was really cool when you told us a little bit about how technically you've got a world record for the deepest boating ever. You want to tell us a little bit about that? So
the picture that I showed you that was all blue of the detector, so there's water inside and there's water outside. So whenever we needed to do maintenance on the light sensors, all of the little dots, we would have to get lowered into a chair into a boat that was sitting on the water, and we'd have to pull the boat up at the end of every day. So we all have swimming training and rescue training, and have to put on life vests and use safety whistles, and have certain hand mechanisms so we can tell the person what to do, and be in our little boat, and then change out light sensors or install fibers or just do some other inspections on the equipment. So this is the deepest boating. This is the deepest clean lab in the world, deepest, cleanest lab in the world, with one of the largest excavated caverns and filled with water, doing the deepest boating that's been done.
All right, very cool. And on our tour, we saw lots of other spaces and caverns for future experiments. So there's gonna be a ton of good science coming out of SNOLAB for decades to come. So that's pretty exciting. All right, well, Erica, George is clean, no more crumbs. I think it's time that we meet some of our classrooms and let them fire away with some questions. All right, so let's get that started. Let's see, where should we start? Let's go to Leamington, Ontario. Mrs. Reeves' class is hanging out with us, some grade 3-4s. Let me get that microphone turned on and let's see how they're doing. How are we doing, Leamington?
Good. Why is it called SNOLAB?
So that is a legacy name. The original name of the original experiment that founded the lab was SNO, S-N-O, for Sudbury Neutrino Observatory. So when we became a whole facility, we just took the name SNOLAB. But if you could come up with something better for SNOLAB to stand for, I would love to hear it. We need a really interesting name.
Yes, that's one thing I noticed is all of the experiments have their little acronyms and their little code names, which is pretty cool. Let's see, let's go to Thompson, Manitoba. Mrs. Oster's grade 4s are hanging out with us. Let's get their microphone on, see how they're doing. How we doing in Manitoba?
Good. How long has the mine been open?
The mine has been open for over 100 years. I think 1913 or 1915 did Creighton mine first open. And maybe in the 1970s, they dug the hole, the straight hole down that our elevator rides in. But there have been more elevator shafts built since then. And yeah, so over 100 years, they've been mining nickel from this place.
All right, very cool. And then SNOLAB, the late 90s is when things kind of fired up with the main experiment?
Yeah, yes. Yeah, mid-90s.
All right, awesome. Let's see, let's go to the States. Let's go to Benicia, California. We've got some 4-5s hanging out with Mrs. Shelton. Let's get their microphone turned on. How are we doing, California?
Say hi.
Hi.
So I hear you guys are almost at the end of your school year. Are you done on Friday?
No. Like
close. We're only a few weeks out.
Oh, okay, a little bit more time. All right, well, we're ready. Who's got a question?
Hi, my name's Cameron, and since you're so deep underground, does your body react different from when you're on the surface?
That is a really good question. So it does. If you've ever been in an airplane and you feel your ears pop as the pressure changes, we have that same experience going deep underground as the pressure increases. And the pressure increase is quite a bit. It's about 25% more of the atmosphere weight on you. So all of our equipment has to be able to operate properly under those higher pressures. And we feel a little bit different. I mean, you wake up really early too to go to work, so sometimes you're extra tired. But you also feel a little bit hungry, and we are trying to understand why that is. One of the biology experiments is using the fruit fly model to try and measure how the increased pressure affects your metabolism, and if there's other ways that we could be acting or eating differently to improve our ability to work here.
All right. And I think that's really cool. Not only is there the experiments with things like dark matter, neutrinos, but there's also some biological experiments. And I'd never seen a treadmill for fruit flies before. So that was pretty exciting to see today. A little treadmill for the fruit flies to put them through their paces. Let's see, let us go to Oakville now. Mrs. Ida, some grade 5s hanging out with us. Let's get that microphone turned on. Oh, wow, nice loud group of grade 5s. Perfect.
Can you sleep overnight while you're there?
Okay, that's
You cannot. There are regulations in the Mining Safety Act, and you're not supposed to sleep on site. But have I definitely caught some people having tiny cat naps before? I'll never tell.
Oh, I don't know. You showed us your secret quiet spot. I wonder if you've ever nodded off once or twice in that secret spot.
I'll never tell.
All right, fair enough. Where haven't we been yet? Let us go to Toronto, Ontario. We've got students hanging out with Mrs. Devine. Let's get that turned on. How we doing, Toronto?
Okay, question, go.
Whenever you do the snow lab, does it cause pollution?
Whatever you do in your snow lab, does it cause pollution?
So it does not cause pollution in, I would think, the normal sense. I mean, we try to be very actually conservationist up here because of all of the work that we've done to make Sudbury a green city after all of the mining, the byproducts of mining. So it does not cause pollution in that sense. And we're actually also very aware of our impact in the land. So we recycle underground. We try to conserve water underground, even with all of the showers, as Joe had mentioned. No, but it's something that we're very aware of, is what is the impact of the science that we do.
All right, very cool. And I'm just going to pull George in. I've got George sitting behind you, so we're going to make use of him. George, I'm wondering, you've been to some pretty, some pretty crazy places. You've been underground before. How does this compare to some of the places you've been so far?
Well, for me, this is fascinating. I pride myself in traveling to some of the most extreme and wild and remote places on Earth. But when you're over a mile underground, it's just so bizarre. And yet there's this beautiful facility down here with such high-tech equipment, you sort of forget that there's a mile's worth of rock above your head at all times. And just a regular business day down here for these folks doing their science. It's amazing.
Yeah, so I can show you around a little bit more in this control room. So we have, so this is where George entered, and we have our computers here showing the event displays of the experiment. Let me make sure the camera is, there we go. So
that's the sphere.
So this is the sphere of my experiment, Snow Plus. And this is, all of these little dots are the light sensors that are currently taking data. So we can clear this and see how they're all firing, just like this. And this is how it is our live stream right now.
Is that on right now?
This is right now.
Live.
This is live, taking data. So I can show you a really cool event. This is a particle called a muon that we come 2 kilometers underground to block out most of the muons. You would have thousands of them interacting in your body on surface, and it's totally fine. This is a normal thing that happens. But we have about 3 per hour interacting in our detector. So this 2 kilometers of Earth stops almost all of them. So we don't see these big bright spots of light. But this muon decayed inside our detector. So it turned from a muon into an electron. And then we can see the electron make this really pretty ring inside the detector. So let me see if I can make that ring a little bit clearer. Yeah, so this is the decay of the electron inside, or the decay of the muon that produced an electron inside our detector. So this is not specifically the science results that we're looking for, but being able to see this reaction is a real great observation of what our detector is capable of, and making sure that we do understand its response. And it was really exciting to be able to find this event to show you these pictures of it today.
And these particles are passing through our body. They're invisible. You can't see them, but they're passing through your body all day long.
All day long. So if you hold out your thumbnail, everyone, you have 100 million neutrinos coming from the sun interacting in your thumbnail every single second. There are so many neutrinos all the time, and very few of them actually interact with almost anything. Maybe one in your body over your whole lifetime, but 100 million for your thumbnail every second.
Pretty wild. And just a little size perspective, the inner sphere is 12 meters, the outer is 18 meters, 9,000 photosensors, and I believe you said this morning they're sensitive enough to detect a candle being lit on the moon.
Yeah, so if you have one of these sensors on the surface of the Earth, and you would be able to detect the amount of light of a candle being lit on the moon.
Science is so cool. That is awesome.
It's just super cool. So yeah, the way George said, that we're in this big underground environment with these, really rough rock walls, but we have light bulbs everywhere. We have Wi-Fi. We have coffee. We have water. We ate lunch here just before now. It's a really amazing facility, and the engineering that it takes to build a place like this and support it is great.
All right, very cool. Let's do another swing through. Let's let our classrooms have a follow-up. So let's swing back to Leamington, turn Mrs. Reeves' microphone back on. If you guys have another question, we are ready.
All right, my question is, how long will it usually take to get where you are?
So when the the elevator is going full speed, it takes 3.5 minutes to go this 2 kilometers. So 40 kilometers an hour, pretty good clip in a car. And then it's another 1.5 kilometers walk. So depending how quick you're walking. From when I leave surface to when I get through into the lunchroom, it takes about 45 minutes. So kind of depending on how fast you shower.
But
yeah, I think the gearing up and finding all the gear took longer than just than getting down. It's actually a pretty quick trip. And I love the contrast of being in the active mine to when you get into this clean facility down here. It's incredible, and you can see why it took years and years and years to get all the equipment in and cleaned and ready and functioning. Yeah, absolutely amazing. All right, where are we going? Let's go back to Manitoba. Grade 4s, your microphone is coming on.
How long do you have to go to school to become a scientist?
So I think you can all be scientists right now in how you look at the world and how the things that you're exploring. But to do what I do, I was in graduate school working on my PhD for 8 years after I finished my undergraduate university education. Some people finish a little bit faster, some people finish a little bit slower, kind of depending on what project you're working on. And many different factors can affect how long you're in school. But you can be a scientist at any age and with any degree.
All right, I think that's such an awesome point. I think really right now for you guys, it's so important to be curious, to ask questions, to look for the answers. And I think it's important, and Erica kind of touched on this, is there's no right or wrong way to get into science. There's so many different paths you can take, so many different options. Nobody's story is the same. So try a whole bunch of different things, see what you like, see what sticks. And then who knows, you could be doing something you love 2 kilometers underground every single day and looking at particles that, you know, we barely know about. So there's so many exciting things to explore and discover. And you know, right here in Canada, we have this amazing facility. So it's really cool to be able to come down here and visit. Mrs. Shelton's class, back to California. Let's get that microphone turned on.
Introduce yourself. Hello, my name is David. And my question was, how long did it take to build the lab? And how old is the lab? And how big is the lab?
So the construction for the original lab, for the original experiment, started in, I think, the early 1990s. So let's say that the early 1990s. Then it ran for probably 7 or 8 years before the construction started on the lab expansion, and that again took around 5 years and was done in stages. So you would excavate one cavern and you would make it clean, and then you would go and excavate the other cavern and you would make it clean, and you would tie the different areas together as they were ready to all be met. And the total area of the lab is 54,000 square feet. It's like a shopping mall in how the little like tunnels and corridors connect.
And there's still upgrades going on right now.
And there's still upgrades.
Building stuff.
Yeah, so we're still building some of the new experiments, and we're looking into making some of the areas, turning them into clean lab space. So letting more experiments be built in different areas. And we're not full yet, and hopefully we'll be able to expand more if that ever happens.
All right, and before we go to another classroom, I've got Chelsea sitting here with me. And Chelsea, you have a pretty cool gig this summer. You get to do some science communication, and I think that's a really cool field of science, telling the stories, sharing in an exciting way. Tell us a little bit about what you're going to get up to this summer.
On our YouTube channel and on our on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook, a little bit about what people at SNOLAB do. So a video about how we get down there. A lot of your questions have been about how do you get here, how clean is it, stuff like that, what you have to do to get here, and then what different people's jobs are here that allow us to do all of this science.
Sometimes I'll focus so much on science, telling the story to the public always come natural. So having someone who's really good skills in media, whether it's video making, social media, things like podcasts, things like writing articles, I think that's another really cool field of science that you can explore, especially if something in those medias or arts is something that really interests you. You can bring the science in as well. All right, Mrs. Ide's class, grade 5s. Let's get that microphone turned back on. See if you guys have another question. There they are. All right, who's got the question? Someone coming up?
I do.
All right.
Why do you have to be so clean when you go into the lab?
So all different labs are different, and that's a really good question. Because we are walking through an active mine, there is a lot of dirt and dust that's around us. So we want to wash all of that off because there are other particle decays that happen in the dirt that would interfere with the signals that we're looking for in our detector. So we come 2 kilometers underground to shield from cosmic rays, and then we want to stop any other dust coming through the lab. We have air fans and filters that circulate the air in the lab so that dust doesn't get to settle on things. And then we filter it every time and cool it down so that we try and take out any of the particulates because they would cause interference in our detectors.
All right, and if there's one thing I've learned from today is don't get in the way of Erica and her science. Erica takes her science very seriously, so very cool, very exciting, and that's another really cool thing is your passion really shines through for what you do, and I think that's what makes you a really good science communicator, Erica, is you're very excited about what you do, and that rubs off on people.
Thank you.
All right, Toronto, Mrs. Devine's class, let's get that microphone turned back on.
Woo! Isabel.
What is your greatest discovery?
Did you catch that, Erica? They're wondering about, they said your greatest discovery, but maybe the lab in general. Is there anything, some really cool science that came out of the lab?
So the original experiment that kind of started the lab going, the SNO experiment, they studied neutrinos that come from the sun. And what we didn't understand is how the sun produces neutrinos and how exactly they travel to the Earth. It turns out that neutrinos are different than most of the other particles that we know about, and they change what we call it flavor, what type they are as they're traveling through space. So it starts out as an electron neutrino inside the sun, becomes a muon, electron, a muon, and tau all together by the time they get to Earth. So the SNO experiment was able to be different than all of the other experiments in how they detect neutrinos. They could detect all 3 flavors and tell the difference between them. So that showed us some really weird quantum properties about the neutrino, and they ended up winning the Nobel Prize for it. They shared it with another experiment that's in Japan that showed the same kind of change in neutrino properties as they came from the atmosphere. So neutrinos that are produced in space and interacted in their detector in Japan. So the 2 leaders of those 2 experiments won the Nobel Prize in 2015. So I'd probably say that's the greatest discovery that's come from the lab. But that was the past, and who knows what's going to happen in the future. There's so many possible things that we're looking for that I think is just the beginning.
All right, Nobel Prize. That's not too shabby. We have a question came in from Mrs. Shelton's class. They sent this one in via text, and they're wondering where the funding comes from for a facility like this.
So it is a combination of federal funding for the original experiments and provincial funding for the lab expansion, and then continual grants that we apply for to run the facility. And then the individual experiments apply for grants from the government to build their projects. And it's not just Canadian funding as well. Some of the experiments have funding from the States. Some have funding from other countries. We have collaborators in the UK and Germany and Czech Republic and Portugal and all over. Mexico and Japan, I think, and China. It takes, because these projects are so big, it takes so many people to make it happen, and so much time and effort. So it's from all over, really.
All right. So as always tends to happen, is time just flies by, but we definitely have time to squeak in one more question. And I think I'm going to go back to Mrs. Ide's group in Oakville, because I just want to hear them cheer one more time. So let's get their microphone turned on and see if they have another question. What do you guys think? Do you guys have another question?
Answer the question. I have a question. It's not your I have a question.
Okay. Somebody's got to ask the question.
How long does it take? Is the Wi-Fi good down there?
Yeah. It is. I mean, I'm not sitting here watching Netflix, but it's enough to be able to stream this video, and it's how all of our experiments, unfortunately, used a boring wired connection to get their data up to the surface. But it's really important to keep that connection so that all of the experiments can move their data onto servers somewhere else, and for safety's sake too nowadays.
Yeah. All right. Very cool. Well, first of all, classrooms, thank you so much for taking the time to hang out with us today. Thanks for joining us on our trip to SNOLAB. Huge thank you to Erica. We've got Blair hanging out behind the scenes. We've got Chelsea hanging out with us today too. First trip down to SNOLAB. And George, thanks so much for joining me on this adventure down to SNOLAB. Always great to hang out. And yeah, Erica, thanks for sharing with us all that great information. And we look forward to another journey down to SNOLAB.
Anytime.
All right, the last thing we'll do today, boys and girls, I'm going to turn the microphones on, so get nice and loud so they can hear you all throughout SNOLAB. Say goodbye and thank you, and then we'll sign off for today. So here we go. All right. Thank you, Erica. Thank you, SNOLAB. We look forward to our next event.